Captain Deho's hands gripped the command console as another explosion lit up the void outside. The tactical screen painted a grim picture in pulsing red warnings. 3 massive battle fleets reduced to floating debris in less than 6 hours. The HFY Warbeast had awakened, and the galaxy was paying the price. Captain, incoming transmission from Admiral Kwan aboard the Thunderbolt. Communications Officer Minho announced, his voice tight with barely controlled panic. The holographic display flickered to life, revealing the bloodied face of Admiral Kwan. Behind him, sparks flew from damaged consoles as his crew fought to keep their flagship operational. Deho, we're pulling back to Rally Point 7, Kwan gasped. That thing just tore through my entire strike wing like they were paper boats. My best pilots didn't even have time to scream. Through the viewport of the EU's Harmony, Deho watched the distant flashes of weapons fire. Each burst of light represented another ship dying, another crew lost to the creature's insatiable hunger for destruction. Sir, the creature just adapted to plasma cannons, Lieutenant Hyjin reported from her station, her fingers dancing across the sensor controls. The Altarian 4th Fleet's weapons are completely ineffective now. Their energy signatures are being absorbed and redirected back at them. Deho studied the readings with growing dread. The beast wasn't just surviving the attacks, it was learning from them. Every weapon fired at it made it stronger, smarter, more dangerous. The creature itself defied every law of nature and engineering. Nearly a kilometer from head to tail, its chitinous armor gleamed like black metal in the starlight. But this wasn't ordinary armor. The surface rippled and shifted, adapting to each new threat in real time. Plasma burns healed within minutes. Kinetic impacts were absorbed and dispersed. Even the exotic matter weapons of the Zephyrian Empire had failed to leave more than superficial scratches. How long has that thing been sleeping? Asked Dr. Bo Young, the ship's xenobiologist, as she pulled up ancient records on her tablet, according to the archives. Nearly 800 years, replied Tactical Officer Sung Ho. The HFY created it during their final war against the hegemony. When their civilization fell, the beast went dormant on that research station, till some brilliant scientists decided to poke it with sticks, Deho muttered bitterly. The research station Omega-3 had been a marvel of galactic cooperation. Scientists from dozens of species working together to unlock the secrets of extinct civilizations. Now it was a twisted wreck of metal and organic matter, wrapped in the coils of humanity's worst nightmare. All ships maintain distance, Deho ordered into his cum unit. We're not engaging that thing. I repeat, do not engage. But even as he spoke, he could see Captain Yoon's destroyer lightning strike moving closer to the creature. The young Jess. Captain had lost his homeworld to raiders last year and carried a burning need to prove himself in battle. Lightning strike, fall back immediately, Deho commanded. Negative, Harmony, came Yoon's reply. I'm making an attack run. Someone has to test its defenses. Captain Yoon, that's a direct order. But it was too late. The destroyer's weapons lit up the darkness as it unleashed everything in its arsenal. Photon torpedoes, particle beams, and quantum missiles streaked toward the Warbeast in a dazzling display of military might. The creature's 6 ice quitch, the size of a shuttle, suddenly blazed with crimson light. Its massive head turned toward the approaching ship with fluid grace. The weapon struck its hide and simply vanished, absorbed into the shifting armor like raindrops into sand. By the ancestors, whispered Navigation Officer Ji-hoon. No, it's not even trying to dodge. The Warbeast's response was swift and terrifying. Organic cannons erupted from its back, firing concentrated bursts of energy that the creature had absorbed. From previous attacks, the lightning strike tried to evade, but the beast's aim was perfect. The destroyer exploded in a brilliant flash, taking Captain Yoon and his crew of 200 with it. That thing is learning, Hyjin whispered, staring at her sensor readings. It's getting smarter with each kill. Through the viewport, Deho could see the station's twisted remains floating in space. The Warbeast coiled around the central hub like a metallic serpent guarding its nest. The creature's movements were hypnotic, almost beautiful, if you could forget the destruction it represented. Captain Dr. Bo-young said, her face pale as she studied the incoming data. The Galactic Council is preparing to use antimatter bombs. They're going to sterilize the entire sector. Daeho's jaw tightened. And sacrifice everyone still alive on those stations? There are research teams scattered across 12 different facilities. They're calling it acceptable losses, she replied bitterly. In the ship's family quarters, his daughter Yoonji was probably playing with her toys, building castles with colorful blocks, unaware that the adults were planning to turn an entire sector of space into radioactive dust. The thought made his chest tight with protective fury. The Warbeast suddenly uncoiled from the station, its massive form undulating through space with impossible grace. A cargo vessel, the Prosperity, was limping away from the destruction, its engines damaged and crew desperate to escape. No, Daeho breathed. The creature moved with predatory patience, closing the distance in seconds. Its jaws opened, revealing rows of crystalline teeth that could slice through starship hulls like butter. The Prosperity fired its emergency thrusters, but it was like watching a mouse try to outrun a striking cobra. The ship disappeared between the Warbeast's powerful jaws with a sickening crunch of metal. 73 souls lost in an instant. Their final screams lost in the vacuum of space. 8-year-old Yoon-ji pressed her small hands against the cold reinforced glass of the observation deck, her breath fogging up the surface as she watched the distant light show. The flashes looked like fireworks to her young eyes, pretty bursts of color against the starfield. Her father had told her to stay in the family quarters with Mrs. Kim, but the elderly caretaker had fallen asleep reading. Her stories and curiosity had won over obedience. The corridor outside buzzed with activity. Crew members rushed past carrying data tablets and repair equipment, their faces tight with worry. None of them noticed the small girl in her bright yellow pajamas, slipping through the shadows like a ghost. "Status report on Sector 7, Captain?" Daeho's voice echoed from the bridge speakers. Even from here, Yoonji could hear the exhaustion in her father's voice. He'd been awake for 2 days straight, and she worried about the dark circles under his eyes. The Warbeast just destroyed another cruiser. Engineer Sung-min reported over the comm, his voice crackling with static. The Braveheart didn't even get a distress signal out. Whatever that thing is made of, it's absorbing energy and using it to grow stronger. Yoonji climbed onto a maintenance crate to get a better view through the observation port. In the distance, she could see the twisted remains of the research station, looking like a broken toy wrapped in something dark and shiny. Sometimes the dark thing moved, and when it did, more pretty lights appeared in space. The ship's artificial gravity hummed reassuringly under her feet. But she could feel the tension in the air. The grown-ups were scared, really scared, and that made her stomach feel funny. When adults got this worried, bad things usually happened. Captain Communications Officer Min-ho announced, "We're receiving evacuation requests from 14 civilian transports in the outer system. They want escort protection to the jump gates." "Tell them negative," came her father's tired reply. "We can't risk civilian lives by getting closer to that thing." Yoonji frowned. Her father always helped people. Why was he saying no now? Down on the bridge, Captain Daeho stood over the holographic tactical display with Commander Jin-woo, studying the patterns of destruction. The creature had been active for 18 hours now, and its behavior was becoming more complex with each attack. "Look at these movement patterns." Daeho pointed to the tracking data. "It's not just randomly attacking. There's intelligence behind its movements. It's testing different ship types, learning their weaknesses." Commander Jin-woo, a veteran of the Centauri Wars, shook his graying head. "In 30 years of military service, I've never seen anything like this. It's like fighting a thinking weapon that gets stronger every time you hurt it." "Sir, the Council fleet is retreating," Lieutenant Ha-jin announced from her station. "Admiral Vex is pulling all remaining forces back to minimum safe distance for the antimatter strike." The word sent a chill through the bridge crew. An antimatter bombardment would sterilize everything within 50,000 kilometers. No survivors, no rescue missions, no second chances. Dr. Bo-young pulled up holographic displays of the creature, rotating the three-dimensional image to study it from every angle. Her tablet was filled with behavioral analysis data, genetic scans, and energy readings that painted a disturbing picture. "I've been analyzing its movements for the past 6 hours," she announced to the assembled officers. "The Krexi designed it as more than just a weapon. It shows signs of complex problem-solving abilities, spatial reasoning, even what might be emotional responses." "Emotions?" Commander Jinwoo scoffed. "That thing is a killing machine, Doctor. Don't mistake predatory behavior for feelings." Dr. Boyoung wasn't convinced. "Look at this footage from the first attack. When the research station's scientists tried to communicate with it, the creature paused. For 17 seconds, it just listened." Wang Yunji had grown bored watching the distant lights and decided to explore. The ship was huge, with corridors that seemed to go on forever. She'd been on the Harmony her whole life, but there were still places she'd never seen. Her father had always said she was too small for the technical decks, but she was 8. Now, practically grown up, she found herself outside the bridge, where the important decisions were made. The door was slightly open, and she could hear familiar voices inside. Carefully, quietly, she peeked around the corner. The scary monster was right there on the big screen in the middle of the room. But seeing it up close, Youngji felt something. The adults seemed to be missing. The creature wasn't acting like the space pirates in her adventure books or the robot villains in her cartoons. Its movements reminded her of something else entirely. The pattern suggests it's establishing territory. Dr. Boyoung continued her analysis. "See how it keeps returning to the central station? That's not random behavior." Yoonji wandered closer, studying the images with curious eyes that hadn't yet learned to see monsters everywhere. The scary monster looked different from what the adults were describing. When it moved around the broken station, it reminded her of something familiar, something safe. "Daddy," she said, tugging on Daeho's uniform sleeve. The entire bridge crew froze. Captain Daeho spun around, his eyes wide with surprise and concern. "Youngji, what are you doing here? You're supposed to be with Mrs. Kim." She fell asleep. Yoonji replied honestly, "Daddy, why is the big space puppy so angry?" The bridge fell silent. Commander Jinwoo's face darkened as he looked down at the small girl. "Child, that's not a puppy," he said sternly. "That's the most dangerous weapon ever created. It's killed thousands of people." But Yoonji tilted her head, studying the creature's movements on the screen with the innocent wisdom that only children possess. She watched how it coiled around the station, how it moved through space, how it seemed to patrol the same areas. "Over and over it looks lonely," she said softly. "See how it keeps going back to that broken place? Yeah, that's its home, and someone hurt it." The adults exchanged glances. Dr. Boyoung paused her analysis, suddenly seeing the creature's behavior. "Through different eyes, Captain," she said slowly, "she might be onto something. Look at these territorial markings around the station. They're not random destruction patterns. They're protective." Lieutenant Haijin pulled up additional sensor data. The creature hasn't attacked any ship that didn't fire first. It destroyed the research equipment that was scanning it, but it left the living quarters intact. Yoonji nodded sagely, as if this was obvious. He's scared and angry because people were poking him while he was sleeping. Grandpa's old dog used to act the same way when strangers came to the house. Commander Jinwoo started to protest, but Captain Daeho held up his hand. His daughter had always been perceptive about animals and people. Maybe, just maybe, she was seeing something they'd all missed. While the adults debated tactics in the war room, their voices growing louder with each failed strategy, Youngji had found her way to the main observation lounge. She sat cross-legged on the soft carpet in front of the massive display screen that showed a live feed of the Warbeast. Her stuffed dog Bingo clutched tightly in her arms. The room was dimly lit, casting everything in a blue glow from the monitors. Most of the crew avoided this area now, too frightened to look directly at the creature that had turned their universe upside down. But Yoonji wasn't afraid. She studied the monster with the focused attention that only children could manage, seeing things that adult eyes somehow missed. "It's scared," she whispered to Bingo, adjusting the worn toy's floppy ears. "Look how it keeps circling the same spot." When Grandma's dog Thunder was scared during storms, he did the same thing in her kitchen. The creature had been dormant for 3 hours now, coiled around the research station's central hub like a massive guardian. Its chitinous armor caught the light from nearby stars, creating patterns that shifted and changed as it breathed. Every few minutes it would raise its enormous head and turn those 6 glowing eyes toward empty space. As if searching for something that wasn't there, then it would make the sound. The first time Yunji heard it, she'd nearly dropped Bingo in surprise. It was a low, haunting cry that somehow traveled through the vacuum of space and reached their sensors. The sound was picked up by the ship's communication array and played through the speakers, filling the observation lounge with an alien song that made her chest feel tight. No weapon should make a sound like that, Chief Science Officer Park had said earlier, shaking his head in confusion. But to Yunji, it didn't sound like a weapon at all. It sounded lonely. Lieutenant Haijin found her there during her routine patrol of the ship's civilian areas. The young officer's face was drawn with exhaustion, her usually perfect uniform wrinkled from too many hours on duty. Yunji, you shouldn't be watching this, she said gently, kneeling beside the small girl. It's too scary for little girls. Your father would be worried if he knew you were here. I'm not scared, Yunji replied matter-of-factly, not taking her eyes off the screen. He's not mean. He's just confused. Nobody taught him how to be good. Haijin followed the child's gaze to the creature on the display. The warbeast was moving now, its massive form gliding through the debris field with surprising grace. As they watched, a piece of twisted metal from a destroyed ship drifted too close to its territory. Instead of ignoring it, the creature carefully pushed it away with one of its smaller appendages, almost like it was cleaning its space. See, Youngji pointed, he's being neat. Mean monsters don't clean up. On the screen, the warbeast suddenly perked up, all 6 eyes focusing on something. Off camera, a small maintenance drone had drifted away from a damaged cargo vessel, its automated systems still trying to complete repairs despite its ship being destroyed hours ago. The little robot tumbled through space, sparks flying from its damaged circuits. Haijin tensed, expecting the creature to destroy the drone instantly like it had everything else that came too close. But instead, something extraordinary happened. The warbeast extended one of its smaller arms, still the size of a shuttle, and gently caught the drone. For a moment, the most feared weapon in the galaxy held the tiny robot with the careful touch of someone handling a baby bird. Then, instead of crushing it, the creature nudged it with its snout, almost playfully. Did you see that? Yunji jumped to her feet, pointing excitedly at the screen. He wants to play, but he doesn't know how. The drone is too little and fragile. Maintenance drone's emergency beacon was flashing, and its repair arms were moving frantically, trying to fix something that couldn't be fixed. The warbeast watched these movements with what could only be described as curiosity, occasionally tapping the drone with the tip of one claw to make it spin. It's like watching a cat play with a mouse, Haijin whispered, though there was something different about this interaction. The creature wasn't hunting or tormenting its prey. It seemed genuinely interested in the drone's mechanical movements. Dr. Boyoung entered the observation lounge, carrying her data tablets and portable scanner, her face flushed with excitement. She'd been running between the medical bay and the sensor stations all day, collecting readings that contradicted everything they thought they knew about the warbeast. The readings are fascinating, she announced, not noticing Yunji at first. The creature's brain patterns show emotional complexity we didn't expect. When it made that crying sound earlier, the neural activity was consistent with grief or loss. It's not just a mindless killing machine. That's what I've been trying to tell everyone, Yunji said seriously, making both adults jump. They hadn't realized she'd been listening to their scientific discussions. He needs someone to teach him. Like when Daddy taught me not to bite when I was little. Dr. Boyoung knelt down to Youngi's level, studying the child's face with the same intensity she'd been using to analyze the creature. What do you mean, sweetie? When I was really little, I used to bite other kids when I was mad or scared, Yunji explained, hugging Bingo tighter. Daddy didn't get angry. He just showed me better ways to tell people how I felt. He taught me to use words instead of teeth. On the screen, the warbeast had released the maintenance drone, but it continued to follow the little robot with its eyes. When the drone's power finally failed and it went dark, the creature made that haunting sound again, softer this time, almost like a whimper. "Look at its body language," Dr. Bio Young said, pulling up comparative data on her tablet. "The way it's holding its head, the positioning of its limbs. If this were a terrestrial animal, I'd say it was displaying signs of depression." Lieutenant Hai-Jin checked her chronometer. "The Council fleet will be in position for the antimatter strike in 6 hours. If we're going to do something, it has to be soon." As if sensing their discussion, the Warbeast suddenly moved. It's massive. Head turned toward their ship, and for a terrifying moment, those 6 alien eyes seemed to look directly at them through the screen. But instead of attacking, the creature tilted its head in a gesture that was almost questioning. "He knows we're different," Youngji said quietly. "We haven't shot at him yet. It's wondering why." Commander Ginwoo's voice suddenly crackled over the comm. Filled with urgent tension, "All hands prepare for emergency acceleration. The Warbeast is moving again. It's heading directly for our position." Red alert klaxons began blaring throughout the ship. Emergency lights bathed the observation lounge in pulsing crimson as the crew prepared for what might be their final battle. But Youngji wasn't running or hiding. She pressed her small hand against the screen and whispered, "Don't be scared, Big Puppy, we won't hurt you." On the display, the kilometer-long creature continued its approach, moving with purpose, but without the aggressive posture it had shown during previous attacks. It was coming to them, but maybe not to destroy them. Maybe it was just lonely and wanted to understand why these strange beings weren't trying to hurt it. Alarms screamed through every corridor of the Harmony as the massive Warbeast uncoiled. From the research station, like a sleeping dragon awakening from centuries of slumber, red warning lights bathed the ship in crimson as the creature's kilometer-long form began moving toward them with terrifying purpose. "Contact in 47 seconds, Tactical Officer Sung-ho reported, his voice cracking under pressure. "Accelerating beyond our engine capacity." The bridge erupted into controlled chaos. Officers ran between stations, their fingers flying over control panels as they prepared for what everyone assumed would be their final battle. The creature's adaptive armor gleamed like liquid metal, pulsing with absorbed energy from the dozens of ships it had already destroyed. "Evasive maneuvers," Captain Daeho shouted, gripping his command chair as the ship lurched to starboard. "All weapons, prepare to wait," Dr. Boy Young interrupted, her voice cutting through the noise like a blade. She stood from her science station, data tablet clutched in her trembling hands. "Captain, our weapons will only make it stronger. Every ship that's fired at this thing has only fed its power. We need another approach." "Then what do you suggest, Doctor?" Commander Ginwoo demanded, watching their tactical display as the creature closed the distance with impossible speed. "We can't outrun it, and we can't fight it. Are we supposed to just sit here and wait to die?" The main view screen? The Warbeast grew larger with each passing second. Its massive head weaved hypnotically as it approached, like a cobra preparing to strike. Energy crackled along its scales in patterns that hurt to look at directly, and its 6 eyes burned with an alien intelligence that seemed to pierce right through their hull. 30 seconds to contact," announced Navigation Officer Ji-hoon, sweat beading on his forehead. "All hands, brace for impact." The creature's head filled their entire view screen now, so close they could see individual scales the size of shuttlecraft. Each scale seemed to pulse with its own internal light, creating a mesmerizing pattern that spoke of technologies beyond human understanding. In the chaos of the bridge, nobody noticed 8-year-old Yoonji slip away from the family quarters where Lieutenant Minesio had been trying to keep her safe. The security officer was too busy coordinating evacuation procedures to notice one small girl in yellow pajamas. Sneaking past .EUN-G, had memorized every corridor on the ship during her 8 years of life aboard the Harmony. While the adults ran around in panic, she moved with quiet determination toward the main communications array. She'd watched her father use the controls hundreds of times during their exploration missions, fascinated by how voices could travel across the vast emptiness of space. Her small hands worked the simple controls with practiced ease. Activating the external communication system that was normally used for hailing other ships or space stations. The microphone was too high for her to reach normally. But the chaos had knocked over a maintenance stepladder, which she quickly climbed. 20 seconds to contact, came Sung Ho's strained voice over the intercom. The creature is opening its mouth. On the bridge, the crew watched in horror as the Warbeast's jaws began to part, revealing rows upon rows of crystalline teeth that could slice through starship hulls like paper. Each tooth was the size of a person, and they gleamed with an inner fire that suggested they were more than just organic matter. "It's charging some kind of energy weapon," Dr. Bio-young reported, staring at her readings in disbelief. "The power buildup is unlike anything in our databases." Captain Daeho closed his eyes for a moment, thinking of his daughter somewhere in the ship. At least she wouldn't see the end coming. At least she would be spared that final terror. But Yoonji. "Get back here!" Lieutenant Haijin spotted the small girl just as she reached for the communication controls. But it was too late. The Warbeast's face filled the main screen completely now. Its alien features terrible and beautiful at the same time, energy gathered between its jaws like captured lightning, ready to reduce their ship to atoms. The creature's 6 eyes focused on them with predatory intensity, each one burning like a small star. But instead of seeing a monster, Yoonji saw something else entirely. She saw the same look that Thunder, her grandmother's old dog, used to get when he was confused and scared by loud noises. She saw the way her pet space hamster acted when it was in a new environment, trying to decide if the humans around it were friends or threats, standing on her tiptoes to reach the microphone. Yoonji looked directly into those burning alien eyes, not with the fear that paralyzed the adults, but with the calm authority of a child who had spent her whole life around animals and understood their behavior better than any textbook ever could. "Sit," she said firmly into the microphone. The single word echoed through the ship's speakers and broadcast out into the vacuum of space through their communications array. It carried with it all the confidence of a young girl who had never doubted that even the biggest, scariest creatures could be taught to behave. The effect was immediate and impossible. The Warbeast froze, mid-attack, its massive jaws snapping shut. With an audible clang that resonated through their hull, the energy that had been building between its teeth dispersed harmlessly into space like steam from a kettle. Its enormous head tilted to one side in an almost comical expression of confusion, as if it had never heard such a simple command before. A moment that lasted an eternity, Predator and Child stared at each other across the void. The most feared weapon in the galaxy and an 8-year-old girl in cartoon pajamas, locked in a battle of wills that would determine the fate of everyone. Aboard the Harmony, then, slowly, impossibly, the kilometer-long creature began to settle back on its haunches. Its aggressive posture melted away like ice in sunlight, replaced by something that looked almost like obedience. The alien intelligence in its eyes shifted from predatory hunger to curious attention, as if it was waiting for further instructions. The bridge fell completely silent except for the steady hum of life support systems and the distant vibration of the ship's engines. Every person stared at the view screen in shock, unable to process what they had just witnessed. Commander Jinwoo, veteran of a dozen space battles and survivor of the Centauri Wars, could only whisper for words that summed up what they were. All thinking, "I'll be damned. It's the most dangerous weapon ever created." A creature that had destroyed entire fleets and defied every attempt to stop it had just obeyed a single word from a human child. The galaxy would never be the same again. 3 days later, the universe had turned upside down in the most wonderful way possible. Yoonji sat in the observation lounge with her coloring books spread across the soft carpet, humming a little song while she worked on a picture of herself riding the Warbeast through space like a magical dragon. Outside the massive viewport, the creature floated peacefully in the starlight. No longer the terror of the galaxy, but something that looked almost like an enormous pet waiting for its next command. "Stay close, but not too close." Yoonji called out to the beast through the communication system she'd claimed as her own. The kilometer-long creature adjusted its position with surprising grace, moving just far enough away to give the ship breathing room while still maintaining its protective orbit. She'd spent the last 3 days teaching it simple commands that came as naturally to her as breathing. Stay had been easy once the creature understood it wouldn't be abandoned. Come had taken a bit longer, especially since the first time it approached too quickly and nearly crashed into their hull. But play gently had been the real breakthrough. Maintenance drones that used to scatter in terror now danced around the warbeast like tiny metal butterflies. The creature would extend one of its smaller appendages and gently tap them, spinning them through space in slow, careful spirals. Sometimes it would catch them and hold them up to its massive eyes, studying their movements with the fascination of a child discovering a new toy. "The Galactic Council is calling it impossible," Dr. Boyoung explained to Captain Deho as they watched from the bridge. Her data tablets were filled with readings that contradicted every law of xenobiology ever written. A creature engineered for war, responding to basic animal training commands. "Half the council members think we're faking the footage, but it makes sense when you think about it," Deho replied, watching his daughter offer the beast a nutrition pellet through the airlock's feeding tube. The massive creature accepted the tiny morsel with delicate care, its crystalline teeth barely visible as it consumed the offering. The Krexthai gave it intelligence and social instincts, but they only taught it violence. They never taught it how to be part of a pack. The research data was overwhelming. In just 3 days, Dr. Boyoung had learned more about Krexthai biotechnology than the scientific community had discovered in decades of study. The creature's brain was a marvel of organic engineering, capable of complex thought, emotional responses, and even what appeared to be gratitude. Commander Jinwoo shook his head in amazement as he reviewed the tactical reports. Humans are the only species in the galaxy that domesticated other animals. We understand pack behavior, dominance, hierarchies, positive reinforcement concepts, completely alien to warrior races like the Krexthai. It was true. While other species had evolved as pure predators, scavengers, or prey animals, humans had learned to forge bonds with creatures that should have been their enemies. Dogs, horses, even dangerous predators like falcons had been turned into companions through patience, understanding, and love. The Altarians tried to enslave the creatures they conquered, Jinwoo continued. The Zephyrians simply destroyed anything they couldn't control, but humans? We made friends with wolves and turned them into pets. We convinced wildcats to live in our homes. We even taught birds to speak our language. Yoonji looked up from her drawings, having finished a particularly detailed picture of herself and the warbeast playing catch with asteroids. "Daddy, can we keep him? Please? I promise I'll take good care of him and walk him every day." Eho laughed, the sound carrying relief and joy that had been absent from his voice for too long. "I don't think our apartment back on Earth is big enough, sweetheart. He might accidentally step on the neighbors. We could get a bigger apartment," she suggested hopefully. "Maybe one with a really big backyard, like space-sized." Dr. Boyoung pulled up her latest research data, excitement making her hands shake as she scrolled through the implications. "Captain, this changes everything. The implications are staggering. There are dozens of similar bioweapons scattered across the galaxy, all considered uncontrollable death machines. If humans can communicate with them," she trailed off, "but everyone understood. Ancient weapons sleeping in forgotten ruins, creatures locked away in maximum security facilities, bioengineered nightmares that entire civilizations had fled from in terror. All of them potentially waiting for someone to simply say, 'Sit with the right tone of voice, Lieutenant.'" Haijin looked up from her communication station, where requests had been flooding in since word of their success had spread. "Sir, we're receiving requests from 17 different star systems. They all want to know about the human-animal whisperer. The Centauri Defense Force wants to hire Yoonji as a consultant. She's 8 years old," Deho protested. "And she just tamed the most dangerous weapon in galactic history," Haijin pointed out. "I think age requirements might be flexible in this case." Through the viewport, the warbeast had begun performing one of its new tricks. The massive creature rolled over in space, its entire kilometer-long body rotating in a slow, graceful spiral that caught the light of distant stars. It was the most beautiful and absurd thing any of them had ever seen. A planet killer doing tricks like a happy puppy. Yanji clapped her hands in delight, bouncing up and down on her knees. "Good boy, you're such a good space puppy. Who's the best cosmic dragon in the whole galaxy?" The creature's alien features somehow managed to convey pure contentment as it settled back into its protective position around their ship. Its 6 eyes, dimmed to a gentle glow, and the threatening energy discharges that had once spelled doom for entire fleets now pulsed in rhythm. With what could only be described as happiness, Captain Deho put his arm around his daughter's shoulders, still marveling at how one small girl had changed the course of galactic history. "You know what this means, Youngji? You've just changed how the entire galaxy thinks about monsters?" Youngji leaned against her father's side, still watching her new friend through the viewport. "They were never monsters, Daddy," she replied with the simple wisdom that only children seem to possess. They just needed someone to love them and teach them how to be good. In the weeks that followed, human children across the galaxy would be called upon to communicate with ancient bioweapons that had terrorized civilizations for millennia. Young voices would echo through space stations and starships, speaking simple commands that turned instruments of destruction into protectors and companions. The species that had seemed weakest, with no natural armor, claws, or telepathic abilities, proved to possess the most powerful weapon of all: the ability to see the frightened animal hiding inside every monster. And it all began with one little girl in yellow pajamas who understood that sometimes the scariest creatures in the universe just need someone to tell them to sit, stay, and remember that they're loved. The Warbeast curled protectively around the Harmony, and for the first time in 8 centuries, the galaxy's most feared weapon was finally, truly at peace. The END.